Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, Habibi. It is so lovely to see you again. I just can't believe it. And a great joy always to be in your presence.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. How are you, Sheikh Hasan?
Ahlan wa
It's been a
sahlan.
long time.
Astaghfirullah. Lastu bi shaykhin. Yeah, Sheikh Anwar. It's lovely to see you. It's been an awfully long time. This is the third episode, everyone, of the two Mullas. Welcome. And we have a very special episode for you today, which is us answering your questions. We've been collecting many very interesting questions. We're trying to edge back to being able to talk about anything other than the war, not because we really should, but because I suppose in a way we need to. I'm not sure that we can handle only that level of intensity and drama and trauma and sadness. And I think that the scenes that we're witnessing represent the most important event by far in any of our lives. And I really do think that. I think that that includes 9/11. For me, 9/11 is an attempt by the West to declare war on Islam for political gain, to try to make themselves to cement their cultural power, essentially. And it was at a time in which they were able to control the narrative. I think what's so significant about what we're seeing now is they've completely lost control of the narrative. So they tried again. They tried the whole, well, let's declare war on Islam again to make the liberal narrative more poignant again. And it didn't work this time. It's partly because they're falling apart themselves. Absolutely beautiful. And you see the first one I'm going to be asking you. It's for our purposes here from Anonymous. I am struggling with addiction and I've tried everything. What Islamic prescription can you offer me? It's just that simple. I'd like you to take that, Habibi.
Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad. Well, interestingly, I had a conversation about addiction with CD Sheikh Marwan al-Katib some time ago. And, Sheikh Marwan al-Katib, Hafizahullah. And this awrad that he gives, the idea behind the awrad, as we will see, some ayat, some ahadith, is to do istihdar. What is istihdar? Like bringing to front, bringing into the front certain meanings of the greatness of Allah and the fact that at the end of the day, nothing really exists in reality besides Allah. So it's doing istisghar, making everything small, not your sins small, because istisghar of ma'asi is a sin itself. We're not belittling the sins or making it small, but we are actually making small the fact that our sins, our wujud, the whole existence is kind of laughable when you have istihdar of the meaning of Allah's wujud and His majesty. So he says that he has a certain formula that he gives to people, to brothers, and he has seen amazing results. So inshallah, more than willing to share those ayahs and those ahadith and those awrad with the brothers. Hopefully they will benefit. But obviously there's a condition, the condition being that you have to do your homework. The awrad by itself, the ayahs by itself, as we know, is not going to be very helpful if you cannot understand, how dopamine works, the trigger mechanism of certain ma'asi and sins, staying away from the groups or people who actually push you towards sinning. So reading books on dopamine, you have to do your homework. Whatever the material out there is, there's a lot of useful stuff. Russell Brand talks about addiction. I think he has some useful points on this. It will only work if you're doing your homework, you're staying away from the triggers, understanding how dopamine works, avoiding bad company, not spending a lot of time on screen and whatever it needs to happen. And there's a lot of useful information on how to avoid that. So if you're doing that, if a person struggling with addiction is doing that, then when they come and practice these awrad, they will be immensely beneficial, I believe. So the first ayah, first of all, you have to do a Fatiha Sharifa for the soul of the Prophet ﷺ. You just do a Fatiha for the ruh of the Prophet ﷺ. After that, you recite these ayahs and ahadith until you find some sort of peace and tranquility. There's no set numbers. You do it as much as you need to until you feel like, khalas, I've given the haqq of the ayah. It could be 40, it could be 100, depends on each person's state. So the first ayah that you start with is أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم كل من عليها فان ويبقى وجه ربك ذو الجلال والإكرام. So again, the idea being istihdar of everything is going towards annihilation and only Allah is there, right? It's important to have the istihdar of these ma'ani. It helps really. The second, and you keep repeating this ayah, like I said, as long as it takes until you find some sort of, khalas, I've done justice to the ayah. And then the second ayah is كل شيء هالك إلا وجهه كل شيء هالك إلا وجهه كل شيء هالك إلا وجهه كل شيء هالك. You keep repeating it until you find some sort of tumanina. And then there's a famous hadith of لا إله إلا الله قبل كل شيء لا إله إلا الله بعد كل شيء لا إله إلا الله يبقى ربنا ويفنى كل شيء. I mean, you can just type this in Google and you can, I'm sure you can find the hadith. So you can keep repeating, saying this hadith again, the idea being La ilaha illallah, everything is going to stop being except for the wujud of Allah. The other hadith after this is Allahumma anta al-awwal alladhi laysa qablaka shay wa anta al-akhir alladhi laysa ba'daka shay وأنت الظاهر فليس فوقك شيء وأنت الباطن فليس دونك شيء اقضي عني الدين وأغننا من الفقر. It's another famous hadith and you can pull it up. And doing لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم as much as they feel they need to do. Then after that there's two salawat that Sheikh Marwan actually prescribes. One is the Salat al-Kamaliyya. It's very famous. If you just put Salat al-Kamaliyya, you can have it. And the other is Salat al-Tafrijiyya, or also known Salat al-Nariyya. It's usually known as Salat al-Nariyya, very famous. But it's actually, Nariyya is a tashheef of Taziyya. It's from Imam al-Tazi. So it's, the ulama know this actually. Imam Nabahani actually in his books, he mentioned it, Salat al-Taziyya, but it has become known as Nariyya. Allahumma salli salatan kamilatan wa salam salaman tamman ala Sayyidina Muhammad, alladhi tanhalu biha al-uqad wa tanfariju biha al-kurab wa tuqda biha al-hawaij wa tunalu biha al-raghaib wa husnu al-khawatim wa yustasqa al-ghamamu biwajhi al-karim wa ala alihi wa sahbihi fi kulli lamhatin wa nafsan bi'adadi kulli ma'lumin lak. And ultimately, see, the way it works is that what really works is for somebody to be around Salihin. I mean, if you are alone, if you're doing this solo, it becomes so much harder. أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وكونوا مع الصادقين. At the end of the day, you have to be around Salihin. It makes things so much more easier. If not, then فإنما يأكل الذئب الغنم القاسية. Famously, the wolf eats the stranded sheep. So to the best of your ability, we always tell people to be around a jama'ah, to be around salihin, to be around ulama. Obviously, this is so much more easier in Muslim countries than in the West, but we know that there's brothers and there's zikr and, all kind of majalis, mahafil in the West. So there's no excuse really. I mean, if you look around, you'll find, but it's so much more easier when you're doing it with a group and when you're around salihin.
Well, thank you very much, Maulana Anwar. I think that's going to be immensely helpful for what is it's an extraordinarily widespread problem, and we receive, of course, many, many questions about it. I think that the 12-step program is not without its merit, not to follow it closely, but just to take certain elements from it, because I'd never known anything about it. When I started looking into it in despair at this the sheer quantity of questions that we've received on this, I saw that all it really is al-tabarra min hawli wa quwwati. It was basically saying, I can't do any of this, Ya Rab.
Yeah.
Please help me. Please cure me of this. I can't do it myself. I don't have the power. And I think that, it's amazing that that is the flagship, most famous, dominant addiction program in the West. And it does involve just saying, Ya Rab, help me. And I think should never forget that they have to have that constant prayer in their tongues. They have to constantly be aware that you do your part, but at the end of the day, it's Allah Ta'ala who's going to free you from such things. So may Allah make it
Sadaqtum. Ameen. Ameen.
Tayyib Habibi. So I think we'll move on now to the next question, which is
hold on. There's a question I think I would like you to answer. You send me the list, so I'm reading this from the list.
Yeah, hala.
It comes from Brother Muhammad Hanif. Sheikh, can you please share your opinion on Sheikh Ahmad Sirhindi's conception of Wahdatul Shuhud? Also, how do you view Shah Waliullah Dahlavi specifically and the scholarship of subcontinent in general? Would also love to know which madhab you follow. May Allah preserve you both. Jazakumullahu khairan.
We're both Shafi'is. I'm actually a Maliki at heart, was brought up a Maliki, but I never got properly. And so,
they say once a Maliki, always a Maliki.
Yeah, I'm kind of convinced by the whole idea of Amal Medina. But in any case, we studied Shafi'i madhab, al-Ain wal-Ra's, and it's a wonderful madhab. And that's what we studied for a good decade with the Sayyid, who's a great Shafi'i. So we're very proudly Shafi'i, alhamdulillah. In terms of Imam Rabbani, Sheikh Ahmad Sirhindi, he's a great Imam. But the mashrab that we come from is that he's not correct about this. I'm sorry to not give the reconciliatory answers that others give and that people might prefer. But the particular answer that I've been given when I've asked the highest authorities that I know is that actually this conception of Wahdat al-Shuhud is supposed to transcend Wahdat al-Wujud. You go past the experience of Wahdat al-Wujud, and at a higher level of experience, you realize that it's in fact Wahdat al-Shuhud, and that somehow what Imam Rabbani says is that somehow Sheikh al-Akbar didn't quite get there. You have to realize infarada bihi hadha al-qawl to a very, very large extent. Imam Sirhindi, although he's a very great Imam, and they call him, of course, the Mujaddid of the second Alf, and he's with very, very good reason widely renowned. But even in his own line, take, for example, Sheikh Khalid al-Naqshbandi, the great Imma have tended to side with Sheikh al-Akbar, funnily enough, rather than Imam Sirhindi on these and other questions. For example, Sheikh Khalid Naqshbandi calls Sheikh al-Akbar al-Arif al-Akbar. Al-Arif al-Akbar, he keeps on saying it. He's not just using his laqab, politely, Sheikh al-Akbar. He's using a descriptive term, Arif, and then he's saying al-Akbar. Wahdat al-Wujud is not identifying the existence of the world with God. All it's saying is that there is only one true existence. There is only one real being. So we don't have being, but we have determination. We are determinate. Insofar as we're determinate, right? Look at all these, look at all these determinations here. Look, there's that, there's that, there's this. That's only one type of determination. It's a type of spatial, geometrical determination, right? Quite a quantitative determination. There are all sorts of other types of determinations. What is the definition of al-siwa on the Akbarian madhab? I didn't really like using the term Akbarian, but never mind. It's already come sharia and in use. What is the meaning of al-siwa? The meaning of al-siwa is determinacy, qua determinacy. So, insofar as that thing is that thing, and that thing is that thing, and I am that thing, none of this world is God. It's not God, right? But it doesn't have true being. That's what Wahdat al-Wujud is saying. It's not saying, yeah, there's a wujud, there's a wujud, there's a mawjud, there's a mawjud, mawjud, and then it's all just God's existence, right? It's just all God. No, we're saying those things don't have existence at all. They have determinacy where they're held in existence for a few moments, for a few fleeting moments, deriving everything. They are contingent ontologically in terms of that determinacy, that moment, that fleeting life being granted, that fleeting duration. And they are contingent, dependent upon Allah Ta'ala in terms of their form. If you look at the world around us, it's an aggregation of attributes. What can you single out? You can single out particular attributes, and you can single out attributes in human beings. Now, where do those attributes come from? Those attributes, when you're talking about human wisdom, you're talking about human, let's take these examples, for example, you're talking about human knowledge, you're talking about human sight and hearing and so on. Are these absolute properties which have come into existence through the human existence? No, ultimately, they are derived. وَلِلَّهِ الْمَثِلُ الْأَعْلَى وَلَيْسَ كَمِثْلِهِ شَيْءٌ وَهُوَ السَّمِيعُ الْبَصِيرُ. They are derived ultimately, they're an image, and there's no tashbih, but they're an image. لَيْسَ كَمِثْلِهِ شَيْءٌ. I can't overemphasize the tanzih, but they are an image nonetheless. خَلَقَ اللَّهُ آدَمَ عَلَى سُورَةِ الرَّحْمَنِ. They're an image of the divine attributes. So we're contingent in that way as well. That's what Wahdat al-Wujud is saying. And the only true existence, and we get our determinacy, which you can call existence, but we get our determinacy through a nisbah to that one existent, which is Allah Ta'ala, right? The only real existence is that of Allah Ta'ala. And that's what Wahdat al-Wujud is saying. It's not an identification of the world with Allah Ta'ala. So to say that, oh no, it's only that it looks like that to the Arif, and that's a higher level. Well, Shaykh al-Akbar is not saying that in the first place anyway. He's not saying that, he's not identifying the world with Allah Ta'ala. So Wahdat al-Shuhud in the Tahqiq is not seen as being the Tahqiq. If you're understanding Wahdat al-Shuhud as supposedly a higher level of experience, which cancels out Wahdat al-Wujud and shows that it's false. When it comes to Shah Waliullah, radiallahu anhu, a great, great scholar. I love his works, and particularly I'm in love with Hujjatullah al-Baligha. It's an absolutely fantastic work, one of the great works of our heritage. And he was a great historian. Sheikh Marwan sent me something recently from his Tafhimat, where he very much praises al-Sheikh al-Akbar. And you know, Sheikh Anwar is a much greater expert on the Indian subcontinent and so many other things, of course, than me. But I mean, I have an immense reverence for the Indian scholars of the. But we're not Deobandi or Brailvi. We're Farangi Mahallis, Sidiad. And
thank you for clarifying that. Yeah, we have this sort of autonomy, don't we? To not to choose any particular mashrab from the subcontinent, actually.
Yeah, but do you have anything to add, my dear Habibi?
I don't. I just wanted to say that in reference to Shah Waliullah Dahlawi, Qaddasallahu sirruh, he's one of those unique people, actually, just like perhaps Imam Sha'rani also. And Shah Waliullah Dahlawi came with original works. His Hujjatullah al-Baligha is something that the more you read it, the more you realize that this guy is a genius. I mean, in a Hanafi world, in a Maturidi world, he's arguably an Ash'ari, actually, in a lot of his positions. And also, there's different stories of him. He relates how, because he comes from the Sheikh Abdul Haq Dahlawi mashrab in Hadith, ilm al-Hadith. So he had this soft spot for the Shafi madhab. And he mentions how there was times when he wanted to do Raf al-Yadayn, actually. And there's a riwayah where I'm not sure which of the two is asah, But there's a riwayah where the Prophet ﷺ came in his dream, and there's a riwayah where Imam Shafi himself came in his dream, where he wanted to actually become a Shafi, and told him, no, you have to stay a Hanafi because we don't want this kind of a thing in northern India, because South India are Shafis. But in northern India, we would like to have the unity of the madhab of the Hanafiya, yani its supremacy. So stay a Hanafi, and it's after that dream actually that he left all inclinations towards the Shafi madhab. But again, it shows the uniqueness of the guy, his autonomy of the guy, astaghfirullah, of this great wali, of this great alim, his autonomy and his works, like the Tafhimat and Al-Lamhat speaks for themselves. And the same thing could be said about Imam Sha'rani's, like Al-Mizan Sha'rani. It's a unique work, actually. One thing that is really unique to Shah Waliullah Dahlawi is that he had this amazing understanding, Asrar al-Quran, the secrets of the Quran, the Asrar al-Sharia, the secrets of the Sharia, min hayth al-kulliyat, as its universal application. He was an imam of that. So we're indebted to his works, absolutely. To this day, every time I read Hujjatullah al-Baligha, I find something new every time I read it.
Yeah, I mean, he has an amazing account of human nature, and he builds basically exactly as you said, universal application of those asrar in terms of an extraordinary Islamic anthropology. So it's a must-read work, everyone. That reminds me, Habibi, actually, the way that I'd planned to answer, and then I completely forgot about it when it came to my madhab, is actually I was going to say I'm a Sha'ranian. So that's very much down to Sheikh Marwan, of course, as well, who many, many years ago, I think in the year 2000, wrote his master's thesis on the
Mizan, yeah.
Mizan, yeah. In any case, wonderful. So that's a beautiful question, and I hope the answer may have not been entirely useless.
Okay, there's another question that I would like you to answer, Sheikh Hasan. It's also from Brother Muhammad Hanif. He asks, what do you make of the lack of support shown to the Palestinians by scholars like Sheikh Hamza Yusuf and Sheikh Abdul Hakim Murad? I'm disappointed, like many others who have found guidance through them over the years.
Gosh. I mean, just to note, vocal support is not the same thing as support, which I happen to know they both actually have. So they haven't been vocal. There's no doubt about it whatsoever. I can understand how the lack of adequate vocal condemnation of Israel, particularly that condemnation of Israel, being able to just come out and say Israel. Why is it happening? I think that it's very simple from my perspective. Allahu Alam, is that lack of vocal support is mostly due to the ways they have positioned themselves in their later careers as the heads of accredited Western institutions. It makes it very, very difficult to move, to speak. That said, I don't think anyone can be surprised at the backlash. And that's just because the scenes of horror and suffering, and of course, especially when it comes to the crimes committed against the children, is just, well, I mean, it's a part of a larger event which is paradigm shifting. Again, I think that to not have those voices, you never know, maybe they'll come, but to not have those voices that we have learned to love and to rely on at a time when there's a paradigm shifting event taking place, I think it's disconcerting, it's disappointing. And I will say that I think that present events have ended decisively, and I know this is a bit controversial, but I think they've ended decisively the project of this kind of establishment compliant integration, which may well have been initiated with the best nia in the world, right? And I think it's really important for people not to mistake their speculation, their dhann, but not to mistake their speculation about what underpins this stance for absolute fact, because you can't. I mean, that just betrays a lack of understanding of the way that evidence is related to conclusions. On the other hand, that said, we've moved into a different paradigm now. It's not just after 9/11 anymore. And there are many beloved figures who did an extraordinary job, and they were brave. And it was really difficult because that was a time when the narrative was controlled by the West very successfully. We had to kind of fight to be able to articulate who we are and argue for our continued existence, to kind of justify it. We're not in that time anymore. We're able to be much more assertive. The liberal establishment doesn't control the narrative anymore. It's really slipped from their hands. And so we need people to galvanize us. Now, lastly, I'd say, yes, we hoped for something different, but at the end of the day, there are so many other voices that we can turn to now. And it's not like we are somehow impairing or threatening something in our deen by failing to condemn certain particular individuals for, let's say, their apparent stance. And we're not actually fulfilling any of the conditions of our deen by condemning the individuals. The people we need to condemn right now are the Zionists in Israel, right? And as long as we're doing that, I think we'll be fine. And the people we need to be supporting are the Palestinians. And so, don't spend your time thinking about, isn't it awful that this other person hasn't done the right thing. Do the right thing. That's all I'd say. Yahala. Moving on, I would ask you, my dear Habibi, another question, which is from Abdurrahim this time. What is the number one reason to make Hijra? What is the number one reason, he's saying, to make Hijra from a Western country, especially given recent events?
If you're not doing Hijra for Shari'i reasons, then it makes perfect sense to do it for the dunya reasons. I had a conversation not too long ago with a friend of mine who was an executive at Citibank, actually, and he was told, because he's from the higher ups, he was told that they're planning to let go of 26,000 Citibank employees. And if you're a Citibank employee, I guess our podcast might be your first source of information on this. Imagine 26,000 people laid off in the next 6 months. That's the plan. That's just one organization. Now you can do qiyas on other banks, other organizations. Where are these people going? They're going to go back to their parents' house, apparently. And if you've seen this graph making rounds on Twitter, how in the last 5-6 years, the young people living with their parents have actually gone skyrocketed as opposed to before. Because they simply cannot afford living by themselves. It's just getting inflation. The economy is for all intended purposes, is broken. So it reminds me of Ibn Ata'illah Secondary's very famous, actually, poem where he says, "Man lam yuqbil ala Allahi bi mulatafat al-ihsani qida ilayhi bi salas al-imtihani," which means is that Allah invites you to goodness through mulatafa, through love, through compassion. Mm-hmm. And sometimes in our jahal, ignorance, we don't see it, we don't accept it. Then we are forced to that goodness through salasil, through the chains of imtihan, of trials and tribulations. But Allah will bring us to the same place of goodness. But this time, involuntary, so to speak. So this is what I see the position of Muslims in the West, is that for those who still can, who are capable of making hijrah, I think they should look at it as from the mulatafat al-ihsan. I'm afraid if they don't take the initiative, then the next thing is salasil al-imtihan, la samihallah.
La samihallah.
Increasingly, you realize how Muslim nations actually, they are hostages to what we can only call a global cabal, actually.
Yeah, a global political philosophy. It's not the particular regimes themselves. Yeah,
absolutely. And a good example of it is look at Pakistan. Pakistan, arguably the strongest Muslim nation in military. Yeah, the only nuclear power. tons of physicists, rocket engineers. I mean, mashallah, Pakistan has everything. But look at them. They can't even defend themselves. Forget about helping Gaza or any other Muslim. They can't even defend themselves because they've been held hostage by the World Bank, by IMF loans, and all these conditions that have been put on them for decades now. And they really cannot have the space to make any kind of political, military, or omatic move at all. And you realize, like, okay, the IMF, the World Economic Forum, the World Bank, these global organizations are the parasites, and we are the host, actually. Making dua for our states to collapse and somebody worse coming in their place is not real. There's no hikmah in it.
Absolutely. I totally agree with you. And I think this was some of the lack of foresight and wisdom, which very understandably, but which tended to sully, to impair the value and the real impact of the so-called Arab Spring, as we saw, was this inability to make the distinction between just fleeting political arrangements. Today it's here, tomorrow it's gone, thinking that fleeting political arrangement is the problem, when it's not. It's a much deeper problem. It's the political system and the international system.
All right, I think it's time to wrap it up, Maulana. I think you've been very gracious with your time. And some of these questions were very, very good, actually. I enjoyed answering them. And I think you have, mashallah, if you were in Pakistan and you were answering some of these questions and you had the Pakistani awam sitting in front of you, they would have gone, Nare Takbir, Allahu Akbar. Nare Risalat, Ya Rasulallah. And then also Nare Hadri, Ya Ali Some of your answers would have been, they were beautiful. And people, it's just that you need a big Pakistani audience somewhere in Sialkot. Something that has become of your amama and your jubba and the beauty with which you answer these questions. It's too bad you don't have 1,000 people sitting in front of you.
If we'd been in Iran, they would have said, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad.
Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Well, funny enough, your amama is, with each passing hour, it's turning into a Shia amama, Sayyidina. So if you could just do a proper laffa, so we don't get some brothers here thinking this is some Hausa in Najaf.
Yeah, we don't want them to have wasawis, absolutely.
So let's wrap it up. We thank everybody for their questions. And if you don't mind, we should end this on a lighter note. In this case, we would love to hear you perform something for us, some Iraqi maqam, some nasheed, something, anything. It's been a very long time I haven't heard you, what we call in Farsi, Pashto Zamzama, like a nasheed singing, something along those lines. So if you have, the grace to just grace us with this before we end it.
Well, okay, I suppose I could do a 16th century Ottoman Mawlid.
Yeah, Habibi.
شيل شريان جبرائيل إلى كلام قلبي رفرف أرني وردي سلام هذا جهاد أول زمان. I don't know the words. Yaratılmış cümlemdüm şacir
Yeah, those were the days. Subhanallah. You took me back. You took me back 10 years ago.
Exactly. Nihat Ulu. Look him up. Nihat Ulu. One of the most amazing Turkish munshidun ever, really. Yeah, Habibi, it's been a wonderful journey, as the Americans say, together. Not only this podcast, but also our entire lives, and especially our friendship of the last 20 years or so. And that's it for today. Thank you, everyone.
Sounds good.
Take care.
Thank you so much, Maulana. Take care. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.
Bye-bye now. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. Bye.